My name is Jeanne, and I'm a recovering addict. I say that because even though when I was in my using, my main drug of choice was alcohol, but I also added anything else I could get. But I've had 52 years of being clean and sober, and a lot of things have really happened nicely. And one of the things that I remember about coming to the rooms early was I heard people talk about being clean for a year, and I thought, they're lying. That's not true. Their lives are over. My life would be over if I stopped drinking, if I stopped partying, if I lost all my friends at the time who weren't really friends at all, but I thought they were, that my life would be over and that I would have to sit in a rocking chair, knit, and never ever have any fun. I was 24 and a half coming into self-help programs, and at that time there were probably 2 other people that were in my age group. The rest were all white hairs and blue hairs, or whatever you want to call them. And some of them even were very negative about the younger people coming in. They would say things to me like, "Oh, go on out and drink some more, little girl, because I drank longer than you are old." But I was bound and determined, because for me, my life had come to a point where I just didn't want to live anymore. I had tried suicide twice. The doctor that sewed my arms up said, "Why don't you just not bother us anymore and go jump off the top of a building so we don't have to fix you?" And I really was thinking about that before I went accidentally to a meeting of 12-steppers. So even though I didn't drink for 24 and a half years or use drugs for 24 and a half years, it was so fast for me that I actually got to a point of desperation and despair a lot earlier. And I was just trying to climb out of that black hole, because it seemed like I was in a tunnel, and the opening kept getting smaller and smaller, and one day I knew that I would never come back, and that scared me. I woke up, I was having tremendous blackouts, not remembering where I was, winding up in places that I didn't know where my car was parked, not knowing who I was with or what I had done to get where I was at. And I walked into those rooms, and I thought all those people were lying, and I thought, oh my goodness, isn't this wonderful for them, but there's something wrong, different wrong with me, that I had psychiatric problems, or that I had other problems. I had been to a couple of people, like my doctor, and he told me that I was too young to be having trouble with alcohol, and that perhaps it was my money or boyfriend, so I gave those up. I went to my boss, and he said it was my money, so he managed my money. But nobody at that time would kind of tell me that, yeah, you can be an alcoholic and seek treatment or get out of it at the young age of 24 and a half. You know, it was just, you had to wait till you got, you know, older and further, but I just couldn't go any further. I just could not get up and go on any further. And I accidentally, like I said, went to these meetings, thought it was wonderful for them, went enough times to hear that people thought like I thought, that people did some of the things I did, that people were ashamed of themselves as I was ashamed of myself. And little by little, I discovered that I too was one of them and was an alcoholic, and that I needed to work on getting clean and sober. I've done that for 52 years, and it sounds easier than it is, but actually it's not really that complicated as long as you don't use no matter what. And I think that that's the bottom line, because I've not been perfect in working my steps. I've not been perfect in living my life these last 52 years. I've done some things that I'm not that proud of, but I always fell back onto my 12 steps. I worked in straight jobs for what I called straight jobs, you know, like accounting and office manager and things like that, until I got interested in doing therapy for myself. And I went to therapy, and as a result of that, I discovered that I had a passion and had an ability to work with other people. So I went to, I started some little groups of my own. It was kind of in the 70s when it was called the Human Potential Movement, and everybody was doing sensitivity groups and having a lot of fun and learning about themselves, and especially people in recovery. They were always seeking knowledge about how to live their life better, and so I got involved in that movement. Took some classes, started doing some groups of my own on the side. I worked all day long and then would go home at night and do these groups, and then decided that I really would like to do that full time and not have to work a straight job and be able to help people and counsel them full time. I heard about a psychiatrist who was very unique and different in that he truly believed that people who had life experience were much more valuable than people in his own profession. So I went to see Dr. Tom Rusk, and I'll use his name because I know he wouldn't mind, and told him that I wanted him to kind of cover my operation so that I would be able to do it full time and charge people money and lend me his license. I didn't know, so he said, well, he couldn't do that, but that he would certainly like to hire me as a program director and go into businesses and sell them the idea of putting programs in their companies. And I said, Dr. Rusk, I said, the people in this town are so male-oriented that you probably need to find yourself a male that could do that job, because they're not going to accept a woman here. And that was, over 35 years ago, and I was right on at that time, and since then, of course, things have changed. But when I got in the car, I thought, why didn't I accept that job? And so I was headed to Texas to do some training for the Office of Education that I was doing in the drug education field. And so I wrote back, I wrote a letter, and I said, Dear Dr. Rusk, you know, when I interviewed you, I must have been out of my mind because I am the only person that can do that job for you. Please, let's set up another interview. He holds that letter today and says, you're the only person that ever wrote to me and said you were out of your mind. But anyway, he did hire me. I did go to work for him, worked under him, trained under him, as well as I did some training at UCSD, taught a class there called Counselors on Alcoholism and Related Disorders, worked for Dr. Rusk for about 3 years, and ran a program for him out in East County. He decided that he no longer wanted to be funded by the county and that they were too difficult to work with, which they are, and so he gave them notice that he was no longer going to do that. So that meant that the people that were running different programs for him were going to be out of jobs, you know, that we were going to close down. And it wasn't so much on a personal level, but we had, for instance, in my center, we had so many people that were so dependent or so into getting services at our center, and we were helping so many people that we didn't want to see them not have any service. So I was the only one that had any money. Didn't take a lot, $1,000 back then to incorporate. So I incorporated and became McAlister Institute for Treatment Education, just by kind of a fluke. And I said, okay, I don't want to be the administrator. However, they said, you have to be. And so I became the administrator. That was 30-some years ago. And we started with one program in North County of San Diego. And today we have 29 different programs in 18 different locations. we serve approximately 3,700 clients a day during the week. On the weekends, a little less, because those are the residential people. The thing that I probably like the most about being the administrator of this great program, this great organization, is that most of the people that work here are in recovery themselves. They've all gone on to become certified. They're in school. They're learning all the time, but they have a passion and they have the heart to work with others. One of the things that we're working on is a succession plan, because, you know, I'm 76 now, and I'm not going to be here forever, and we're taking a look at what we need to do in order to keep this organization as it is today. And one of the things that we talked about was that people have to have a passion for working with the addict. They have to have a love for them. I think the other thing that I like the most is that gives me an opportunity to be creative. We have so many different programs. I just always like to, and my staff is so flexible, so easy to work with. I have a man sitting down on my couch in the lobby, and he's got 2 children, and he's been everywhere. And the only way that he could get any treatment is if he was separated from his 2 children, and he did not want to do that. And because of the nature of this organization and the people that work here, I was able to take him to detox and put his children into a program that I have for women and children. He was able to see the children every day. They were able to see him. They were all in the same location. And he got clean and sober, and that family is reunited and on their way to long-term recovery and productivity. Now, that doesn't happen in a lot of different organizations because they only have one program and they only have one way to go. But what's nice here at McAlister Institute is that we have so many different ways to go, and it's those kind of things that make it very worthwhile.